Wife boasts you'll always fund my lifestyle. I left her empty-handed and fuming. I've, 29, male, been married to my wife Sarah, 28, female, for almost 5 years now. I'm what you could call a serial entrepreneur. I start a business and grow them, then sell them when someone comes along with a good offer. It's not the most traditional occupation, but it works for me. It's important for me to point out that I've been doing this for most of my adult life. I started out before I got married. I started building my first business when I was 19 and sold it when I was 21. But while it's not a traditional means of making money, I've been able to make a good living from it. I always keep an income stream available while I'm building up my next project. And when my sale goes through, it's a huge windfall. To put this as humbly as I can, we live well. We live very well, actually. Nice vacations, a beautiful house, the best of everything we wanted. I'm not boasting, but it is a necessary part of the context that you need to understand the story. So, just roll with it. It felt nice to be able to provide, and Sarah took advantage of that. Before we met, Sarah was a receptionist at a high-end salon. She always claimed that she wanted to start her own boutique one day, and I encouraged that. After all, I have a lot of experience starting businesses, so it seemed like a great idea to me. She had more expertise in it, and with my entrepreneurial know-how, I realized that we could actually make it work. I was glad that she was looking for ways to improve herself and earn more. When she told me that she wanted to study cosmetology, I was all for it. When she wanted to stop working so she could focus on learning, I supported that too. If she went to school full-time, she could be done in a year. I made more than enough to cover all of our needs. I thought it made sense to take over for a while so she could work on improving herself, but things didn't work out the way she'd promised. First, she didn't actually go to class. She enrolled in a school, got accepted, and even paid the fee. More accurately, I paid the fee, and it wasn't cheap, so when I realised that she wasn't going, we had a huge argument. She kept telling me that she could just jump in and pick up with her classes whenever she was ready. The problem was, she never seemed to be ready. She spent her days doom-scrolling on Instagram and TikTok in the living room. When she actually went out, she didn't go to class. She usually just went to hang out with her friends. They'd either go shopping or they'd go out to restaurants and post a dozen pictures on their Instagram stories. I blew up at her once. I realised that she had no plans of actually going to school. I asked why she'd lied to me and made me spend so much money on nothing. She just laughed and said that the money was nothing to me. She claimed I'd make it back in no time, and I had much more than that saved away. She didn't even attempt to come up with an explanation. She just painted it like I was overreacting. I couldn't believe how casually she was joking about burning tens of thousands of dollars. Despite what she said, it wasn't a trivial amount of money to me. I worked hard for it. I never acted like money was a given. If you have more than an average amount of money, especially thanks to your own hard work, don't take it for granted. I was pissed off by how inconsiderate she was being, and I didn't bother to hide it. I screamed at her for a good bit, and I told her that she didn't understand the value of money anymore, and I told her I'd cancel her card and her access to all of my funds if she didn't go back to school or get a job. She whined and complained, saying I was being controlling. It sounded like she had been empowered by the stupid things the single women say over on TikTok or Twitter or something. She said that I couldn't cut her off because that would be abuse. I didn't let her guilt trip to Temp's work. When she saw that I wasn't going to cave, she eventually promised to get a job, but she never did get a job after that. I really thought she was looking, and she assured me she was applying a few times. She even went out for interviews. After a few months of searching, I started to think something was wrong. I knew the job market was down, but I had my suspicions too. She had already backed down on a promise when she said she would go to school before. So I decided to test her. I offered to help her out with her resume and cover letter, and she immediately became KI. First, she told me there was no need because her friend had referred her to a professional who had optimized her resume. It seemed like she was reluctant to show me her resume, which only made me more doubtful. So I pressed on. I said a lot of rebuilders were con men who didn't really know what they were doing, and I wanted to verify it for her. I reminded her that I often had to look at RUMs in my line of work. When she made another excuse, I knew she was lying, so I cut to the pretense. I told her that I was 99% sure that she was lying to me and that she should show me her most recent job application. She became defensive and insisted that I was violating her trust. I didn't back down and kept pressing her to show me an email, anything that would prove that she hadn't been lying to me over the past few months. She went through a whole spectrum of excuses and eventually admitted the truth. She was only applying for jobs to get me off her back. I asked her why she'd lied to me, and she said she just wanted to get me to stop nagging about going to cosmetology school or getting a job. She said I made enough money that there was no point in her working. She just wanted to spend her time relaxing and enjoying herself. Wasn't that the point of having a rich husband? That was when I realised that the whole thing was an elaborate and expensive plot to get her out of working. She'd never intended to go to school in the first place. She just knew I wouldn't support her quitting her job to lie around the house all day, and she was right about that. I believe in putting equal effort into the relationship. I was busting my butt all day, providing the high level of comfort that she enjoyed, and she wasn't putting anything into the relationship. She was on her phone all day, or out with her friends. I couldn't even call her a housewife because she didn't do any housework. She barely cooked, and we had a cleaner who came in twice a week. So I gave her a last warning. I told her that our marriage was a partnership and it wouldn't work if she wasn't making any sort of effort. She couldn't just sit around spending money and not doing anything. She rolled her eyes and said she didn't owe me anything just because I made money. She said she was my wife, not her employee, and it was my job to spoil her. I couldn't just make demands of her. I almost couldn't believe my ears because she wasn't this entitled at the start of our relationship. I felt like I was talking to a wall. No matter what I said, I couldn't get through to her. She refused to even acknowledge that she'd done anything wrong by lying to me for months. We got nowhere that day, arguing in circles for a while. In the end, I told her I'd be cancelling her cards until she decided what she wanted to do. I told her she could get a job, go to school, or do some housework. It was her decision, but she needed to start pitching in some way. I wasn't there to take the role of her father. She moped and whined, but when she saw I was completely serious, she got confrontational. She started screaming at me about financial abuse and said that I was supposed to fund her lifestyle no matter what. She asked what the point of being successful was if she couldn't live however she wanted. That frustrated me a lot. So it was fine for me to work my butt off to provide all this comfort, but she couldn't do the bare minimum. She deserved to live in luxury on my dime solely based on the fact that she's a woman. That didn't sit right with me. I take pride in being able to provide, but that doesn't mean I like being taken for a fool. So I cut her off. Not completely, though. I cancelled her cards, but I left one for her with a carefully budgeted limit. It would be enough to cover the essentials with a tiny bit of spending money left over. The goal was just to teach her a lesson, but I was one who learned something instead. Something just kept nagging at me. If she could go this far just to avoid working, what else was she capable of? It felt like I was dealing with an entirely new person, someone I didn't know at all. All the trust I had for her was completely evaporated overnight. So I did some snooping. I'll admit it wasn't my first time. I had some suspicions once when we were dating. I didn't find anything then, and I swore I'd never do it again, but now I felt like there was no choice. So a few nights ago, I waited until she left her phone charging upstairs and I went through it. There were mostly just texts with her friends. I went through those too, trying to see if I could get some insight into what had gotten into her recently. The first thing I found out was that she'd been discussing her recent actions with some of her friends. It seemed one of them had even encouraged her to stop working because a woman like you is surprise. The entitlement in that statement pissed me off, but I kept reading. Eventually, I came across another one of her friends, Kelly. Except Kelly wasn't a friend at all. She wasn't even a woman. It didn't take long for me to realise that Kelly was a guy that she was sleeping with. From the look of it, they'd been having an affair for a little while, a few months at least. I was crushed. I knew that Sarah had changed, that she had been lying to me, but I didn't expect this level of betrayal. We could have worked through the other things, but this was too far. All the moves I was trying to make to get her to be an equal part of our relationship was a waste of time. Clearly, I went through all the messages in complete disbelief. Apart from the flirty messages, she made fun of me as well. She told him that she only loved my money and that her heart was truly with him. He asked if she was afraid of me finding out one day, and all she said was she'd be happy because I'd keep paying for her lifestyle no matter what. If I divorced her, she'd take half of everything, and they'd live large together. I'd seen enough. That was the same thing she'd said when we had argued, that I'd always fund her lifestyle. She thought I was too stupid to do anything, that I was going to take all of this lying down. She probably thought that because of how long she'd gotten away with lying to me. But I'm not dumb. My only mistake has been trusting her too much. I didn't confront her right away. I took my time compiling evidence, regularly getting into her phone to get screenshots of her messages and documenting her movement in and out of the house. I also contacted a lawyer to get started on the divorce. I told him everything, her refusal to work, her lies, her infidelity, and the evidence that proved it. Then I told him about the prenup. Before we'd gotten married, Sarah and I had a prenup drawn up. It protected all my business assets as personal assets, but it was still pretty generous to her. She'd get a reasonable alimony and a fair share of marital assets. That was probably why she felt so sure of getting a chunk of everything I owned. But what she didn't seem to realise was that it was for a no-fault divorce. The infidelity clause laid out what would happen in a situation like this. She would get no money, and the division of marital assets would be up to the court. My lawyer told me that she'd contest this prenup, but he has a good feeling that everything will go my way. She's still completely unsuspecting, and I can't wait for the day when I get to watch all of her hopes melt away. You spent years grinding to build businesses from the ground up, taking financial risks, managing the stress of making it work. And she saw that as her retirement plan, not a partnership, not an opportunity to build something together, but a full-time influencer lifestyle with none of the actual influencing. Honestly, it sounds like she stopped being a partner the moment the wedding gifts were unwrapped. Update. There was a lot of interest in hearing how my story ended up, and I knew it wouldn't be right to leave you all hanging. A lot of you weren't aware that a prenup could be contested. Yeah, they can be, and in some cases, the judge might rule in the woman's favour if it's found to be unfair. No surprise there. The prenup protects you, but as usual, the system tries to protect the woman as if she's a child who can do no wrong. Before I get to that, let me get into what happened when she found out what was coming her way. When I confronted her, I did it with divorce papers in hand. The look of shock on her face made everything worth it. She just asked why I wanted to end things. I told her I knew about Kelly. She went still for a moment, and when she spoke, she just said, "And you didn't think we should talk about this at all?" I told her that there was nothing to talk about because she'd already said enough in her texts. I reminded her that she said she'd be happy if I found out because she'd get part of my money. She started with the usual nonsense. She said she hadn't meant any of those messages. She didn't care about the other guy. She'd just been emotional one day and made a mistake. I told her I don't care about the details. I knew she would just lie through her teeth like she always did. All I cared about were the facts which I found on her phone, and we're now sitting in a folder in my lawyer's office. I told her that we could discuss everything else in court. Her eyes widened. But we have a prenup. We don't have to go to court. I was a little surprised that she really hadn't done her homework, though she clearly wasn't as smart as I had given her credit for. She'd been blinded by the prospect of getting rich for free. I laughed and told her to take a closer look at it. Once her lawyer took a look at the document, she'd definitely want to go to court. I just left her there looking confused. I didn't hear from her for a while after that, but my lawyer later told me that she'd signed and they wanted to contest the prenup. He reassured me that they were trying their luck, but it was a fair document and there wasn't much they could do. My lawyer was right when they said they'd contest the prenup. They tried to pass it off as being unfair to her. They argued that it completely deprived her of her rights. The funny thing was that they were arguing that the infidelity clause was unfair, which meant she had to admit that she had in fact cheated. I found that both funny and infuriating, so she admitted to cheating, but she was still trying to argue about what was fair. Fortunately for me, the judge saw things the same way and ruled in our favour. He said that the infidelity clause of the prenup was completely fair, maybe even too fair considering the circumstances. I wasn't unfairly depriving her of anything, and she wouldn't be poor when everything was settled. She wouldn't be living large like she wanted, but the court didn't care about that. The court also didn't like her infidelity or her refusal to work. Based on that, the judge decided to uphold the prenup, and she got no alimony and no part of my businesses. Our marital assets, like joint accounts and property, were split. The house was always in my name, and it was one of the assets listed as in the prenup, so she couldn't touch that either. Sarah was livid. Compared to what she wanted to walk away with, she was left empty-handed. There was a neat little scene where she blew up in the courtroom. I had to stop myself from gloating, but I couldn't hide a smile. It was cathartic to watch her plans explode on her face like this. She wasn't done with me, though. The very next day, she called me and gave me a piece of her mind. She said I'd stolen from her, and she even claimed I was financially abusing her. I laughed and asked how that was possible when we weren't together anymore. I actually still wondered how she changed into such a materialistic princess type. She threatened to appeal the court's decision. She insisted that it had to be unlawful in some way. According to her, it wasn't fair that we'd built up all these assets during our marriage, and she wasn't entitled to any of it. By assets, she was referring to my business. That was rich. I let it out for her. She didn't build any part of my business. I did that all on my own. She didn't contribute a thing to it. Then I told her she was free to appeal if she wanted to. I looked forward to seeing her burn what little money she had left on more legal fees if she felt like it. It turned out to be an empty threat because I never heard anything about an appeal after that. Personally, I feel like she got away with too much. She lied to me, cheated on me, and wanted to go after my money when she was done with me. As far as I'm concerned, she was a gold digger, a shark that was after everything I had, but I know I was extremely lucky. Things could have gone a lot worse without that prenup. The business that I've spent so long building up could have been torn apart just because some greedy 304 wanted to live it up on my dime. I don't keep in touch with Sarah. Like I said before, we have nothing to talk about. She cheated on me. She tried to cash out and she lost. Now I'm moving on with my life and I'm flourishing without her. My business has never done so well, and honestly, I can't say that I miss her. What's to miss in a leech like her? As for her, she's got no choice but to get a job now. So much for the cushy lifestyle she wanted to live. I don't think things worked out between her and her affair partner because a friend of mine told me that he saw her on a dating app recently. I bet he took a hike as soon as he found out that she didn't get the juicy divorce settlement she was boasting about. So now she was broke and alone. I didn't feel bad for her. In fact, it was just another slice of karma that she'd been dealt. I was glad to hear that she was paying for breaking apart our marriage. So guys, if you feel you're being taken advantage of, do something. You're a provider, but you're not the ATM. And for the love of God, get a prenup. It just might save your butt someday. Her reaction to being served, textbook narcissistic. And you're absolutely right. While prenups aren't bulletproof, they're often a lifeline with someone trying to walk away with more than they deserve. She thought she'd hit the jackpot by marrying a hard-working man and cashing out. Instead, she just got a reality check. And now she has to go do what she actively avoided the entire marriage, get a job. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today on our space. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you soon.